In my first trip, I experienced a state of personal love, acceptance, and profound psychological healing. In my second trip, I faced physiological terror, chaos, and unmitigated nausea, a total loss of control. Why is it possible for a fungus to alter our perception of existence so much? This isn't about my personal journey or any of my personal trips. This is the science behind how tripping happens at all. I want to start with a very common misconception. This molecule right here is psilocybin, and psilocybin technically doesn't help you trip at all. Psilocybin is physiologically inert. You can kind of think of psilocybin as an inert package that you take with the mushroom in your mouth, and it travels down to your stomach, and it's there where your stomach acids start churning it that the magic in the mushrooms happens. And I'm going to read this because it's a science word that I'm not very familiar with. Specifically, alkaline phosphatase breaks it down. Oh, and before we continue, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I'm literally just researching on studies. I'm going to link the studies below. If that stuff interests you, please go check it out. Do reading of what smart people know about it that I know because of them. That alkaline phosphatase actually strips away the phosphate on the psilocybin, leaving you with psilocin. Psilocin is the active compound, and it is fat soluble, so it means it can actually penetrate the blood-brain barrier and have the effect on your mind that it so is famously known for. Which is why when I said last episode, during the come up, specifically when you're eating mushrooms, you kind of have that nausea and upset stomach. It's because your stomach is digesting the chitin of the mushroom and converting all that stuff into psilocin, and if you're not used to it, and if you're particularly sensitive about that kind of thing, like I am, it can ruin a night, especially if you're not prepared for it. But when that come up is all said and done, after your body does what it does and turns the psilocybin into psilocin, kind of acts as like unlocking a door. And once it's in the brain, it's essentially like looking for somewhere to park. And it's looking for the most sensitive neurotransmitters it can find, and so it finds the serotonin ones. There's actually a specific serotonin receptor the psilocin attaches itself to, and it is, let me read it off my script real quick, the 5-HT2A receptor. Now, like I said earlier, it kind of acts as like a key. You can think of the 5-H2A as sort of the lock. And during normal brain operations, the serotonin kind of just slides neatly into that lock and helps you with mood and sleep and so on. Now, the psilocin can also slip into that receptor, not exactly the same, but in an interesting and unique way, all on its own, and clearly a much more intense way. What this causes is a huge amount of surge of communication in the brain between parts of it that don't typically communicate. It really, in essence, kind of changes the frequency of everything on a non-scientific terminology. So obviously the next logical question is, with psilocin sitting into the serotonin receptor acting as a weird makeshift key to make your brain talk to each other in a way that it's not supposed to, why does it make you see things? Why does it change reality? Why does it make you realize you hate yourself? Why does it make you see your legs melting into the floor? Why is it different every time? Now, to answer that, the best that our science has been able to answer it so far, we kind of have to go to the part of the brain where I'll label as the CEO center of the brain. Now, I call it the CEO of the brain because it helps my little simple thoughts make a nice story in my head as to how things operate, but scientists call it the default mode network, the DMN. The DMN is the thing that daydreams. It's the thing that's consistently active even if you're not doing anything. It keeps your brain regulated and moving forward. The DMN is kind of your sense of self. It's also the thing that thinks about the future, worries about the past. It's what you see as you in a weird way. And for me, I guess, it kind of acts like the narrator of who I am, the self of me. That's a line. Now, obviously, what I'm about to say varies from person to person. And in people with anxiety or depression, with their DMN or default mode network, the CEO, they are the ones constantly running the loop, worrying about if I'm good enough, why people don't like me, do I hate myself, what do I need to change about myself, the anxieties that run around in a circle until that circle is a giant canyon in the ground. It is hyperactive in an unhealthy way. A 2012 study done by the Imperial College London actually showed that when psilocin hits those receptors, it sort of quiets that CEO voice. The default mode network comes down a bit. Scientifically, it decreases the blood flow that would reach the default mode network. Kind of gives the CEO a break, so to speak, a little bit of an afternoon or a night off. He leaves the office. And when he does, well, when the boss of anything leaves the office, what typically happens? The employees have a friggin' party, dude. The image you're looking at actually comes from a 2014 study on homological scaffolds of brain networks. On the left is a normal brain on a placebo. It's orderly, visual parts talk to visual parts, auditory parts talk to auditory parts. It remains segregated. And on the right is a brain on psilocybin. With the default mode network offline, the restrictive boundaries of your brain just kind of dissolve. Parts of your brain that have never spoken to each other suddenly have the ability to communicate. This is a topic for an entirely different video, but there's studies been done that maybe each part of your brain is a separate consciousness that kind of comes together and generates the you. But this explains the first episode, why I suddenly had different perspectives and realizations about the negative thoughts about myself, about my own self-perception, when I thought I truly understood myself. I mean, and I did, right? I did. But there was a part of my brain that held information in a different way, maybe. And the communication between the two sides of my brain in a new and unique way after 30 some odd years of life kind of gave me the perspective to see myself above myself, see the forest through the trees, or get above the forest, you know, that kind of thing. And then when you take an enormously high dose, say over 4 grams for no reason, you're fucking obliterating your default mode network. You're firing the CEO until he realizes he's needed more than the employees actually thought they did, and he comes back and all kinds of crazy shit can happen. That's why when I was on that high dose and looking down at my legs, seeing my legs melt into the floor, it wasn't like a cartoonish sense. It was my brain lacking the ability to distinguish where I ended and the floor began. Aspects of my brain were just on vacation for a few hours. That's what psilocybin does. That's what psilocin does. And what's more, if it's something you are not prepared for, have never experienced before, there's that ego, that part of your brain that is terrified. It doesn't know what's happening. It's desperately trying to cling onto any aspect of reality it knows to be true, only to watch it melt away under hallucinations. It's trying to regulate itself when the default mode network in your brain is kind of taking some time off. And that can lead to panic, anxiety, and then a night like I had on that second trip. And I don't mean to say this to be scary, because in a literal sense, you're not dying. But when that happens, when you have such a high dose, your sense of self, the ego death so many people talk about, it's because your sense of self does die. Your default mode network goes offline, but only temporarily. It feels like you're dying, but you're not. It's just who you are, and that ability to understand that egocentric idea of me dissipates, and your brain communicates. If you want to think of it like I do, kind of nerdy in computer terms or story terms, if you do what I did in that first one, going in with setting and intention and an understanding of what you were hopefully looking to accomplish, you can heal. It also helps not to take an enormous amount your first or second time. But if you go in, even on smaller doses, with a sense of arrogance or self-importance, that can kind of crash the system and cause your trip to go haywire. Not that it always does, but for me, at least that's what it seemed like. I guess the point I'm making, and much like I've said before, is respecting the chemistry and understanding what's happening is just as important when going on a journey like this, especially when you need to understand the safety of what you're doing to your brain. Being responsible is the only way to move forward with this. And that last trip that ruined me was the lesson that made sure moving forward I did. But that's a story for next time. I'll see you then.